investing ever be a force for the good? Would be my first question to this distinguished panel. And Lutfey, do you want to take the first stab at this?
Greetings from Singapore, and thank you again for the honor and privilege of being here. I followed your work, Sonja, for a while. I read about Novartis's work, and you guys are pioneers and leaders in this field. And it's very important to be able to move the bandwagon and get the flywheel moving with leadership of the kind that you guys are showing. The short answer to your question is yes. You know, for me, the overarching ethos here is one of stakeholder capitalism. And I don't know when exactly the flip occurred, but to me, around about January of 2020 is the time when I felt that more people had completely flipped from ESG is not really relevant for us to we've been doing ESG all the time anyway. And that is a good flip to have. So stakeholder capitalism requires us to be interrogative about the purpose of enterprise, the purpose of capital, the purpose of employment. Not just what do we do with resources, you know, what is it that we're investing in, but why, exactly how, and to what impact. So I think then what happened in the last 12 to 18 months, the tragic pandemic has created a few changes that I think accelerate this particular trend. Firstly, COVID has uprooted many of the taboos that we didn't used to talk about. At a macro sense, things like universal basic income or government paying, you know, wages for people, through to working from home in sectors that in the past were not possible. So I think our appetite for considering things that were previously considered to be taboo is now very much a bigger appetite. Secondly, for a variety of reasons that I've written about, I think inclusion in a wide sense is a strategic imperative, almost a commercial imperative for many investors and investees right now, even if they were not fully bought in previous to the crisis, to COVID. Number three, there is a growing recognition now that employees and employee engagement are the vector of change, that you really get momentum through the intrapreneurs within these organizations. And then the fourth point is that we just have to watch out for the potential contamination effect of impact washing, of virtue signaling, or tokenism. And there is some that's being done inadvertently, and I think we need to help them make sure that they don't do that. So I think we're now in the execution challenge part of the process, as opposed to the theoretical part of the challenge. I think the role of corporates in this, in my mind, is the rhetoric is there. It's now the execution challenge, which means that people, even those who mean well, companies that mean well, will have to struggle with the challenge. There's a sequencing struggle, there's a coordination struggle, there is a management of various stakeholders, who goes first where. But if there's one thing that I think every player here needs to just keep in mind, is that we need to try and build as much trust in the system as possible. Everything we do, we've got to ask the question, are we contributing to trust, to the build-up of trust here, or are we helping to erode that?
Lutfey, possibly?
Yeah. So, you know, one phrase I use repeatedly is that context matters, and it's a matter of exactly what the context is, and then what is the role of this thing within a system, and then finally is it adding to or subtracting from the fabric of trust, which is what I mentioned earlier. But my general stance is that I think monetization, or in some cases financialization, marketization, these are parts of inclusion for me. There are parts of the world, and there are sectors in the world that would want to be included in what we consider to be the monetized world. So context matters, but in general, I think with safeguards, it is something that widens the net of inclusion and not. Can I just also say that when I said trust is the bedrock of that, very quickly, I think the way we reinforce that flywheel of trust is, number one, with transparency. And you see some of the leading corporates and asset managers come up with clear plans. They're honest, they're authentic. There's a framework for tracking, there's a framework for governance. Some of the banks that I can see, some of the pharmaceutical companies. So proactive communications and transparency is one. Two, the more quality reporting that is done through standardized disclosure standards, the better. And the EU, for all its ills, I think is leading the way with the taxonomy. And I enjoy the debate on whether there should be a red taxonomy. So the parallel with the health world is, don't just show me the nutritional information of this product, but also tell me what the allergens are in it. I know there's omega-3 in the salmon, but what is the mercury content of that? I'd like to see all of that. So you expand the net of that, of the taxonomy, but clearly that is a good thing. The third one, which I think is also very important, is we need to invest on new skills and new competencies. We're talking about a new world where in the world of investing, where we're used to reductionist measures like a Sharpe ratio to determine whether something's a good investment or a bad investment, now we're asking us to be a lot more analytical in the way we look at things. So I think skills and competency development, how we should do this, how should we read standards, how can we be better consumers of these disclosures is important. And the last one is impact washing. I think it really is a contaminant for the good guys, and there are some very specific things that can be done to avert those.
Thank you, Lutfey.